The hall of the alien palace was vast, the ceiling lost in shadows, columns twisted upward like the bones of some ancient beast, banners of glowing silk hung heavy in the air, each thread humming with strange energy. The sound of armored boots echoed as guards dragged a single figure forward, a human, his hands bound, his steps slow but steady. The nobles of the empire whispered from their seats, their scaled faces painted in gold and silver patterns, their voices sharp like knives. To them the human was nothing more than a curiosity, an intruder from a dying world. But tonight was not a normal trial. Tonight the Empress herself had ordered his presence. The Empress sat upon her throne, high above all others. Her eyes glowed faintly in the dim light, her crown a circle of fire that seemed alive. She had ruled longer than any mortal could count, cold, fierce, unshaken by war or betrayal. Yet as the human was forced to kneel before her, she leaned forward, as if sensing something no one else could. The guards shoved him to the floor. The clang of chains struck the marble and silence filled the hall. The Empress lifted her hand, and the whispers died at once. Her voice was calm but heavy with command. "Remove his cloak," she said. The guards obeyed, pulling away the ragged fabric that covered the man's back. Gasps rippled through the chamber, for carved across his skin was a scar, jagged yet shaped with strange symmetry. It stretched from one shoulder blade to the other, glowing faintly under the hall's light. The human said nothing. His eyes scanned the hall, meeting the stares of 100 alien lords who wanted him gone. His breathing was slow, his body weak, yet his presence carried a weight no one could deny. The Empress rose from her throne. Her robes of black and crimson trailed behind her like living shadows. Step by step she descended, each footfall echoing. She came close enough that her shadow fell across his scar. Her lips parted, a tremor in her voice. She reached out but stopped short of touching him. "This mark," she whispered, "it cannot be." Her voice grew louder, breaking the silence like thunder. "At last," she cried, her eyes wide with shock. "I've found you, human." The hall erupted. Some nobles shouted in fear, others in rage. A few dropped to their knees as if before a god. The guards tightened their grips on their weapons, unsure whether to protect their Empress or strike the human down. The man himself lifted his head, confusion written across his face. He did not understand what power the scar held, nor why this alien ruler looked upon him with such awe. But in that moment, he felt the weight of destiny settle on his shoulders, heavier than any chain. The Empress turned sharply to her court, her voice cutting through the chaos. "No one touches him," she commanded. "He is under my protection." The chamber trembled with noise, arguments rising like storm winds. Yet her word was law, and even the angriest noble dared not defy her openly. The human remained kneeling, but inside him a storm began to rise. He knew his life had changed forever. The scar on his back was not just a wound. It was a key, and it had just unlocked a future neither human nor alien could control. The great hall had not calmed. The Empress still stood near the kneeling human, her golden crown glowing with inner fire. Her words echoed in every corner of the chamber. "At last, I've found you, human." And the nobles could not stop whispering. Some of them leaned closer, their jeweled robes rustling as they hissed their doubts. "It is only a scar, nothing more," one said. "This is a trick, a human's trick," another snarled. "If the prophecy is true, then he is dangerous. Kill him before the omens rise." The guards shifted uneasily, their armored hands tight on their spears. They had dragged many captives before their ruler, but never had the Empress risen from her throne for any prisoner. Never had her voice carried such fear and wonder together. The human did not resist. His eyes burned with questions, but he held his tongue. He knew silence was stronger than words when surrounded by enemies. He could feel the scar on his back pulsing, as though it were alive under the eyes of the court. The Empress took a single step closer. Her hand hovered above the scar. She did not touch it, yet the glow within it seemed to answer her presence. Her pupils widened, her lips trembled. It was not only recognition, but something deeper, something old. "This mark," she said, her voice heavy with memory, "was carved in the stars long before you were born." The chamber erupted again. One noble shouted, "Superstition." Another cried, "Lies to bind us to fate." But there were others whose faces turned pale. They remembered the stories told in shadows, the prophecy hidden in forbidden texts, the prophecy of the star scar. The Empress lifted her gaze and her voice sharpened like a blade. "Silence," she commanded, and all obeyed. Her eyes fell back upon the human. "You do not know what you carry, do you?" she asked. The man shook his head slowly, his voice rough but steady. "It is only a scar, nothing more." Her smile was faint, filled with sorrow. "If only that were true," she whispered. The nobles stirred once more, their words clashing like swords. "He must be destroyed before the sign awakens." "No, to slay him would be to bring the curse. Keep him alive, study him, use him." The human raised his head, and for the first time he spoke with strength. "I am not your prophecy. I am not your curse." His voice cut through their noise, firm yet calm. The Empress stared into his eyes, and something shifted inside her. For the first time in centuries, she felt the pull of destiny, not as a ruler, but as a living being bound to forces beyond her control. She turned to her guards. "Take him from the hall," she ordered, "not to the dungeons, but to the chamber of the scholars." Gasps filled the air. To send a prisoner there was unheard of. It was a place where ancient runes were studied, where secrets of the empire were guarded like fire. The guards obeyed, dragging the man to his feet. The nobles shouted in protest, their voices filled with anger and fear, yet none dared step forward, not when the Empress's gaze burned with such command. As the human was led away, he felt the weight of 100 eyes upon his back. The scar tingled, burning faintly under the banners of the hall. He did not understand its meaning, but he knew this was only the beginning. And above them all, the Empress stood unmoving, her voice still echoing in her own mind. "At last, I've found you, human." The chamber of the scholars was deep beneath the palace, carved from black stone that shimmered with veins of light. Strange symbols glowed faintly on the walls, words written in languages older than empires. The air was heavy with the smell of ink, burning oils, and the quiet hum of machines that had studied secrets for centuries. The human was pushed inside, his chains still tight. Around him the alien scholars gathered, their robes covered in star maps, their eyes burning with endless curiosity. They circled him like hunters around prey, whispering to one another in hushed tones. One of them pointed to his back. "The scar matches the patterns in the prophecy." Another hissed, "It is impossible. No human could bear such a sign." Yet the glow beneath his skin told them otherwise. The Empress entered, her steps echoing in the silence. The scholars fell to their knees, pressing their foreheads to the stone. She raised her hand, and they rose. Her gaze was fixed only on the human. "Bring the tablets," she commanded. A scholar hurried forward carrying a slab of crystal. Symbols shimmered across its surface, shifting and glowing. The Empress spoke, her voice steady. "Long ago it was written, when the empire is torn by shadow and the stars grow cold, a marked one will rise, not of our blood, not of our world, but carrying the fire to either save or end us." The words fell like thunder. The human frowned, his voice calm. "I am no savior. I am only a man." But the Empress shook her head. "The scar is not a wound. It is a map." The scholars pressed closer, one lifting a scanner of golden light. As it passed over the human's back, the scar blazed brighter. Symbols leapt into the air, twisting into shapes that matched the crystal tablet. Gasps echoed through the chamber. "The prophecy lives," whispered a scholar, his voice trembling. The human felt heat crawl across his skin. He turned his head and met the Empress's eyes. Her gaze was not cruel now, but filled with a strange mix of fear and reverence. One scholar dared to speak boldly. "Empress, this human cannot remain. He is too dangerous. The nobles will not allow it. The armies will not obey." Her voice cut him down like a blade. "The nobles obey me, not their fears." Yet even as she spoke, the Empress knew her words would not hold forever. The throne was built on power and suspicion, and the sight of the scar would shake both. Already whispers of rebellion crawled through the palace like smoke. The human lowered his head, his voice softer now. "If what you say is true, then I never asked for this." The Empress stepped closer, her hand hovering near his scar again. "Nor did I. Yet here we stand." The chamber grew cold, as though the walls themselves listened. The scar glowed brighter, casting light across the faces of the scholars, and in that light the Empress whispered words only the human could hear. The throne is not as strong as it seems. You may save it, or you may burn it. The human felt the weight of her words press against him. Heavier than chains, destiny had found him, whether he wanted it or not. The palace was restless. The news of the human scar spread faster than fire through dry fields. In the corridors, nobles argued in whispers. Servants carried rumors in trembling voices, and soldiers tightened their patrols. The throne had not shaken this much in centuries. Inside the war chamber, the Empress stood tall. Her generals and noble advisors surrounded the great circular table of glowing maps. Yet no one looked at the shifting stars on the table. Their eyes were fixed on the single subject none dared speak too loudly about: the human. One general slammed his fist against the table. He is a danger, Empress. If the prophecy is real, then he holds power beyond our understanding. If it is false, then he is nothing but a trick. Either way, he must be destroyed. Another noble hissed, keep him alive, study him. If the scar is a weapon, we can use it against our enemies. Imagine the power in our hands. But there were voices of fear too. A pale noble whispered, the old texts warn of doom. To kill the marked one is to bring ruin. Our empire will crumble if we spill his blood. The chamber filled with arguments, voices clashing like swords. The Empress raised her hand and silence fell. Her eyes burned with fire. No one touches him, she said. He is under my command. The generals bowed, but their faces betrayed doubt. Some already planned in their hearts to obey the Empress in daylight and plot in darkness. Meanwhile, the human sat in the scholar's chamber, guarded by two soldiers whose spears glowed with plasma light. He felt their stares, not of hatred, but of unease. They had fought wars against humans before, but never had they guarded one that could break their empire with a scar. He kept silent, but his mind raced. The words of the Empress still echoed. You may save it, or you may burn it. He did not want to save their empire, nor destroy it. He wanted freedom, yet freedom seemed far away now. When night fell, the Empress came alone. Her crown was gone, her robes simple. She stood in the shadows of the chamber, watching him. You hear their whispers, she said softly. You know they want you dead. The human looked up, his voice calm. Why protect me then? She stepped closer, her eyes hard. Because your life is a blade hanging over my throne. If you die, I may fall. If you live, I may still fall. But if I guide you, perhaps the throne may yet stand. The human gave a faint smile, not of joy but of weary defiance. I am not your weapon, Empress. Her voice grew sharper. Then what are you? He turned his gaze away, the scar burning faintly. I am only human. Her silence was long and heavy. She studied him as if the answer was hidden beneath his skin. Finally she whispered, only human may be more than you think. From outside the chamber came the faint sound of steel on steel, a clash, short but sharp. The Empress tensed. Soldiers rushed past the doorway. Their shouts carried the warning, assassins. The Empress's eyes narrowed. She knew the truth at once. Some noble had already acted. She drew a blade from her side, its edge glowing red, and placed herself between the human and the door. For the first time the man saw not a ruler, but a warrior ready to kill for survival. And in that moment he understood. The scar was not the only danger in the empire. Greed and fear burned hotter than prophecy, and both were coming for him. The night stretched long in the palace. Torches flickered against the stone walls as soldiers hunted the assassins. Their cries echoed through the corridors, metal clashing against metal. Yet within the scholar's chamber the air was heavy. The Empress stood guard with her blade still glowing, and the human sat silent, watching her. When the danger had passed, she lowered her weapon, but her shoulders did not relax. Her eyes were sharp with thought, burdened by choices too heavy for one ruler to bear. She turned toward him, her voice low. They will not stop. Every noble who fears the prophecy will send blades in the dark. If I kill you myself, the throne may survive. If I protect you, I may lose it. Tell me, human, what would you do? The man met her gaze, his chains clinking softly as he shifted. His answer was simple. I would survive. The words struck her harder than any blade. She looked away, her mind storming. For centuries she had ruled by strength, by cunning, by fear. But this human carried something she did not understand. He had no armies, no crown, yet his scar made the empire tremble. In the days that followed, she visited him often, not as an empress, but as a woman searching for truth. She asked of his past, of the wars on his world, of the loss carved into his memory. He spoke little, but each word was heavy. He told of fire raining from skies, of comrades buried in ash, of survival bought with pain. One evening she asked, "Do you hate us? Do you hate me?" He did not answer quickly. His eyes drifted to the scar that burned faintly across his back. "Hate is easy," he said at last. "But I have no space for hate anymore. Only questions." Her chest tightened at his words. For all her power, she too carried questions. Was she a ruler of destiny or a prisoner of prophecy? Could the throne survive truth or only lies? Her advisors pressed her daily. Some begged for the human's execution. Others whispered of using him. The court split into factions, daggers hidden behind smiles. At last the Empress summoned her most trusted scholar, a frail being whose eyes glowed like dying stars. "Tell me the truth," she demanded. "What does the prophecy say if the scar-bearer stands with me?" The scholar bowed low, his voice thin. "If he stands with you, Empress, the empire may rise into a golden age. If he stands against you, the empire will break like glass." The Empress dismissed him, but the words gnawed at her heart. She sat alone in her private chamber that night, her crown resting on the table, her blade across her knees. She whispered to herself, "Protect him and risk everything. Kill him and end it now." Outside her window, the stars burned cold. Within her chest, a war raged louder than any fought by armies. And in the silence of that long night, she knew her choice would shape not only her throne, but the fate of two worlds. The palace stirred before dawn. The Empress had ordered the scholars to gather in the Chamber of Runes, a place older than the empire itself. The walls glowed faintly with symbols carved by hands no one remembered. The air thrummed like a heartbeat. The human was brought in under heavy guard. His chains rattled as he walked, but his head was high. He had grown used to their stares. Some looked at him with hatred, some with fear, and some with something stranger, a quiet respect. The Empress stood at the center of the chamber, her eyes fixed on the scar across his back. She raised her hand, and the scholars activated ancient machines. Golden arms of light stretched from the walls, beams scanning across the scar. The moment the light touched his skin, the scar blazed. Symbols burned into the air, glowing lines that formed patterns none had seen in living memory. The chamber gasped as the runes floated, turning slowly in the air. One scholar whispered, "It is the celestial script." Another trembled, "These words have not spoken in 1,000 years." The human flinched as the scar burned hotter. His voice was rough. "What is happening to me?" The Empress's gaze did not waver. Her voice was steady. "The truth is waking." The glowing runes shifted, forming a map, stars and galaxies drawn in light, paths crossing like threads of fate. At the center was a burning point that matched the scar on his back. "It is not a wound," said the oldest scholar. "It is a seal." The human's eyes narrowed. "A seal of what?" Silence fell, until the Empress spoke. "A seal of power, hidden within you, placed by hands beyond both human and alien." The prophecy was not about a scar. It was about what lies beneath it. The runes spun faster, filling the chamber with light. Soldiers raised their spears but dared not strike. The scar pulsed with every beat of his heart, brighter and brighter, until shadows fled the corners. The Empress stepped closer, her hand trembling as it hovered near his skin. "Do you feel it?" she asked. He clenched his fists, his breath sharp. "I feel like fire in my blood." Her eyes widened. "Then the seal is breaking." The nobles who had followed into the chamber shouted in fear. Some fled, others screamed for his death. The guards froze, torn between obedience and panic. The scar burst with light one last time, and then faded, leaving only silence. The runes above dissolved like mist, but their meaning remained. They had seen destiny written in flesh. The human staggered, breathing hard. He felt weaker but also clearer, as though the universe itself had whispered into his bones. The Empress looked upon him not as a prisoner, but as something greater. Her voice broke the silence, soft yet powerful. You are not here by chance, human. You are the key to a choice that will decide if my empire rises or falls." And though he did not yet understand the weight of those words, he knew his life would never again be his own. The throne hall was filled beyond its walls, nobles pressed together, generals lined in armor, servants kneeling at the edges. Every eye turned toward the human as he was led to the center once more. The scar on his back had already become legend, a tale whispered across the empire in less than a single night. The Empress entered, her steps slow but heavy with command. She wore her crown, yet her face carried no mask. Her eyes burned with the fire of someone who had touched truth and could never return to lies. She raised her hand and silence swept the hall. The human knelt, though not in surrender. His chains were still upon him. But he looked stronger, his voice steady, his presence unshaken. He had no crown, no armies, yet the chamber trembled because of him. The Empress stepped down from her throne. Her robes of crimson and black trailed like living shadows. She stood behind him, her hand hovering above the scar that still glowed faintly under the hall's light. Her voice rose. "You see the mark upon his back," she declared. "You see the prophecy written in flesh. You see the seal broken before your very eyes." Murmurs filled the hall. Some shouted that he was doom. Others whispered that he was salvation. The empire itself balanced upon the edge of one choice. Then her voice thundered, breaking through the noise. "At last," she cried, her eyes wide with awe. "I have found you, human." Her words rolled like a storm. Nobles gasped. Some fell to their knees in fear. Others drew daggers beneath their robes. Generals shifted uneasily, knowing the throne itself had changed in that moment. The human lifted his head, his voice strong. "I never asked for your throne. I never asked for your prophecy. But if you chain me, if you fear me, then I will still survive, because that is what humans do." The hall erupted in chaos. Some shouted for his death. Others begged for his protection. The Empress turned, her blade flashing from her side, her eyes blazing. "No one will touch him," she commanded. "Not while I breathe." Her cry shook the throne itself, a sound that would echo in memory for centuries. The nobles froze. The soldiers lowered their spears, and in that silence the empire changed. The human rose slowly, chains clinking but spirit unbroken. He was no longer only a prisoner. He was a symbol, a question that could not be silenced, a spark that could light stars or burn them to ash. The Empress looked into his eyes, and for the first time in her long rule, she did not see a subject, nor a rival, but an equal. And as the hall watched in fear and wonder, a new story began. One scar, one throne, and one human standing at the heart of destiny.